I mean, each step in the whole thing looks like a milestone of evolution. So beyond that, there is something else also.
I mean, beyond realization. Yeah. We can now classify knowledge itself. No? I have just shown you what are the forms in which knowledge are. Now you can ask what are the domains of knowledge. I'll show it to you. You want to see? It actually falls like this. This is the lowest is the knowledge of survival. That's the biological knowledge that drives all animals and that drives us also. That knowledge is necessary for all people. That's the protective knowledge at one level. Biological knowledge. Without biological knowledge, nothing can happen. By biology, I mean the knowledge of survival. If there is fire, you will turn it away. There is a desire to live. There is a desire to continue like that. These are all biological knowledges. By biological, I mean man as a biological system. So each sphere of knowledge actually represents man's sphere as a system. Then you have the next thing, knowledge of the world. This is man as a human species. When you are a human species, when you say man as a world, that is where you start seeing things like, that is actually where 95% of the world lives. They are just above the biological level, where they are caught up in relationships, they are caught up in power, they are caught up in the structures of life, they are caught up in money, they are caught up in saying, ye mere ko chahiye, wo mere ko chahiye. Wants, haves, this is what I want, the acquisition of the world around them. This is all to actually define their ego, their identity as a human being. Who am I as a human being compared to others? So my human identity is actually determined at the level of knowledge of world. This is man as a biological system, this is man as a social human system. This is basically social animal. Animal, social animal. Then comes the next level is the knowledge of doing, which is actually the knowledge of competence. The capacity to do things in a purposive way. So this purposive knowledge is a very profound paradigmatic shift from the man, from the human. I want to make it clear that this is also available to most chimpanzees. Social. For example, that fellow will show his power by through actually beating up the other guys and so on and so forth. So it's actually available to chimpanzees and man equally. Only man is more sophisticated because of his brains. But as a social species, they operate less like this. Here it's more. Here it is much less. Then comes the next level is knowledge of doing, which is where competence comes in. Purposive action. Purposive action is an inflection point in man's evolution. I have decided to do this. Like for example, what all of you are doing is purposive action right now. When you are making a document, it's purposive action. When you are purposive action, you take a dog, for example, its purposive action is limited to running behind a truck or something, or to go there and to find food and come back. So its purposive action is very, very biological in nature. It doesn't, because purposive action requires imagination. It requires anticipation. It requires investment. It requires you to delay gratification. You need to delay gratification. So many powerful things happen to man at the level of purposive action. So man as a competent being, it requires practice. It requires struggle. It requires intentionality. So many of the higher qualities of man all reveal itself here. And then you have the knowledge of being. This is a very simpler model that is there of knowledge. And then you have knowledge of being. And knowledge of being is who you are as a being, which is far beyond your competence. That is, this is what we meant by function. These two are actually function and this is being. These two together represent function. This represents being in the purer sense. Now, when you say that people are operating without, as long as there is a knowledge of doing in you, there is an I, because I am the doer. In being, I am that, or what I am actually starts dissolving. So actually, this knowledge starts here. These three come from being. While these knowledge comes from here.
The what am I starts getting dissolved or starts getting more clarified?
Which one? Who am I? Who am I gets actually what actual real clarification is dissolution. It's declutter actually. It gets decluttered, and as it gets decluttered, then you start seeing more and more with greater clarity who you are, and who you are you find out is being. So it actually dissolves, finally dissolves knowledge. It dissolves the ego. Okay? Okay, you were asking.
Knowledge of survival and knowledge of doing. While the dog finds food, it is for survival. So, what is that thing of knowledge of doing? Doing is purposive action?
Yeah, knowledge of, see, for example, when it is trying to find food, it is driven by the hunger. Being driven by the hunger means it is actually a completely locked in by hunger. That is, hunger is driving it. So it is actually operating without control actually. The hunger requires it to find food, and then it goes searching for it. So it is driven at a very different level. Driven because the body has to survive. While when I am trying to build a competence, even if it might be, even though I might also use it for collecting food or whatever, I may use this competence for also getting survival. But is it not a tragedy if you use a higher human capability for a lower human capability? There should be only proportion of this used for all these lower things. A higher proportion of this should be used for even higher knowledge. No? While what may happen is man may get certain competencies, and if that competencies are used only for survival and knowledge of the world, then that competency is being used in a particular way, right?
Agreed.
And it will be underutilized. That means I am using it for something lower rather than higher. You have been given a higher currency. I am trading in that currency for something lower. While I could use that knowledge to actually create something bigger. It's like squandering away your wealth. Degraded, but more, yeah, it's degradation. I don't want to use that word, but in a way, you end up squandering. I think that's the right word. You squander your wealth. Because your purposive knowledge is such a unique knowledge, is such a special knowledge, the ability to purposively act with imagination and to build something within yourself, such a wonderful knowledge. Why squander it away only on survival issues? You use it, finish it off, do enough of this, but also use it for building your being, right? Only 1/4 of this should be used for this, 3/4 should be used the other way around. Then you will become even stronger. And when you are here, all knowledge of doing somehow looks like doable to you, no?
We should more light on this delay in gratification in this different states of.
Actually, what I know in survival, there is the gratification drives your actions. You are whether it's immediate or not, it dominates your consciousness.
Totally pervades.
It totally pervades and totally controls it. When it reaches here, it thoda kam ho jata hai, but you still want it, and it drives you in your desire for that whatever that power or your desire for this. It makes you act against our higher nature. It makes you act in a way which is counterproductive to your own evolution.
Second order desires. Basic desire.
ये second order थोड़ा Maslow type भी हो जाता है, थोड़ा ऊपर चला जाता है.
I plan to build a house over next 15 years.
वो सब, but if you want it very badly, see, one thing to want it, because see, survival is not a bad thing. Knowledge of the world is not a bad thing. It is how do you use your competence. Do you use it for managing it, or do you get driven by it? Again, it comes down to, are you a slave of it or are you a master of it? Yes, exactly. That shift is there. So, if you live to eat, then it's a wrong thing. If you eat to live, then your eating is a lower order to serve a higher order need. But live to eat means that the higher order capability of yours, which is living, is being driven by a lower order need. Got it?